Hello, today we are going to do a field strip and cleaning of a Sig P238. These are pretty good little shooters. I like the Hogue grips personally, because I got a pretty meaty grip there. Let's start by making sure we are clear. Alright, so to get this slide off, there's kind of a trick to it. First of all, let's make sure the safety is disengaged or down. And if you slide that back, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but there's a little half circle on the top of the slide stop. So if you line that up just perfectly, and if you see how I did that, put the webbing right there and just pulling that back with my right hand to line that up. Now with my left hand I'm going to push on the slide stop, and when you get it perfectly it will come out with no force. If you find yourself trying to hammer on this and using a lot of force, you're doing it wrong. Just like that. So that's removed. We can go ahead and push that slide forward and off. Now I want to point out a couple of things. As soon as that slide is removed, this is the ejector. It pops up like that. When we reinstall, we must make sure that's pushed down. If you try to push that on with a lot of force, you can break or bend this. You'll have ejection problems, and that's a bad day. Also, do not, I repeat, do not push the safety up. That plunger will go flying. It's like impossible to find, and the word is you'll have to even send it back to Sig to fix it. So let's not do that today. Alright, so this piece has had 400 to 500 rounds fired from it, the first rounds, and it hadn't been cleaned. It actually looks pretty good. There's some acceptable carbon down there. Again, today is just a field strip. So let's actually place that to the side for now. Look at this. As we remove the slide, or the recoil assembly here, you'll see that there's a half moon shape on the bottom of that, and that went against the barrel. This is a non-captured spring, so let's take that out. Nice little flat wire there. I don't know that it matters, but the orange was to the rear. We'll clean that up in just a second. Remove the barrel. Looks pretty good. So to begin our cleaning, let's start with the barrel. What we're going to be using is an Otis pistol kit today. So here's our pistol cable. Let's start with a patch of solvent. This is just Butch's Borshine as a solvent. Again, we always go from chamber to muzzle. I'll use a wet patch to kind of clean up the feed ramp a little bit. So this looks pretty good. It doesn't actually need a brush, but I'm going to run one as an example. So I've already treated it with solvent as the chemical cleaner. Now we're going to do a physical with the brush a couple of times from chamber to muzzle each time. Now typically when we do that, when we run another patch, we will see that the brush has loosened more deposits, and we'll see more carboning on our second patch. So my order of operations is I'll patch it a couple of times to loosen it up, then I'll brush it, and then I will patch it until clean. Yeah, see, so the brush loosened most of that. and we'll call that good. So now the bore is clean. We've used solvent and a brush. There's one final patch I want to run. I run an oil after the solvent to kind of neutralize it and prepare it for storage. So just a light coat of CLP. Notice how that came out clean. Now this is ready for lubrication and reinstallation. I'm just going to take my same patch here, go ahead and clean up this guide rod. This leaves it clean and just with a very thin oil coat. Going to do the same thing lightly to the recoil spring. I will put a couple drops of oil on this when we lubricate it for reassembly. Let's look at that slide stop here. And ready for reinstallation. And now let's look at the top of the slide itself. This is largely just a cosmetic issue. What we are going to do is remove all this carbon and make sure we get good lubrication in these ridges for reinstallation. So what I like to do is start with a clean patch, oil that patch, and push it around with one of these wooden Q-tips. A plastic hook works very well. So the logic here being that the wood and the plastic are non-marring, and all we're really doing is removing the carbon and the buildup, the dirt. Don't forget to clean the back face where the hammer strikes. So I'm now just going to give this a once over with a rag. Let's try a clean rag now. Now we want to clean the breech face here. Just a small patch with a little bit of oil. Push it around with a wooden dowel. So we have the slide cleaned up. Let's reassemble it and do a little bit of lubrication. So let's start with our barrel. Just a drop. Oop, that's too much. Alright, so a thin coat of oil on the barrel. Reinstall. Take our spring and put it back on the guide rod assembly, putting the half moon down. Drop that in like so, so that it is flush, and just one drop on this assembly. I'm going to dab most of that off. You don't technically have to clean these or lubricate these. It's just if you don't, they'll kind of squeak and it drives me crazy. So lubricate this at your own peril. And with that, the slide is reassembled, and we're going to put this to the side and wait to put it back. Just a quick note here. So this P238 has a small issue. This pin is trying to work itself out. This is after 400 or 500 rounds fired. I'm going to try to drive that back in. You might be tempted to think that this pin just holds like a changeable back strap here. That's not the case. This is actually the mainspring housing. If you if you look at this hammer, I'm going to drop the hammer here for a second. Again, that was controlled. Don't just pull the trigger. We'll have to put that down again for slide reinstallation. But I wanted to point out to you that there is a rod and a spring The top of that rod is here, the bottom is about here, and it is captured by a spring that goes all the way down in a channel here. This piece captures that. This pin retains that piece. So I'm going to attempt to drive this back in and get it to seat flush again. If you have this issue, feel free to contact Sig. They have a fantastic customer service department. They will make this right. And in fact, the safety on this is just a little bit sticky. I would even complain to them about that and have them work that safety so that it's smoother to engage and disengage. Again, Sig will take care of you. So, I'm going to use my masking tape roll here. Going to support this as best I can without putting pressure on these wooden grips, or as little as possible. I have a radiused punch here that should match the radius of that pen, and let's see what we get. Alright, this looks nice and flush again. If this backs out, we're definitely going to send, a second time, we're definitely going to send it to Sig and see what they have to say. Let's look at cleaning this receiver now. So much like we did the slide, I'm going to oil a patch, push it around here, paying special attention to clean these rails. We're going to be very careful to avoid getting oil like underneath this wooden grip. With this, I think it's Parkerized finish. I do like to, so I'm going to lightly oiled patch I'm going to rub on here, and then try to rub as much of it off as I can. It gives this a nice finished look that I like. Kind of evens out all the tones. So to clean these rails, just a little bit of oil on a rag, and a fingernail fits perfectly. Again, we're being careful not to squeeze the trigger and let that hammer fly forward unabated. That can damage internal parts. And at this point, I am wiping off all the excess oil. All the excess oil. We will lubricate it when we go to reinstall. Just a drop of oil on a finger. I like to clean the blued pieces here this way. And then go back with a dry piece of rag. And you see that gives a nice tone to that bluing, which has a, so this might be bead blasted finish to it. Of course, you got to watch it for any oil spots will stand out. Alright, so on the rest of this gun, I'm using just CLP as a lubricant. I could use my bacon-flavored Liberal Tears, but this pistol isn't mine, and I don't know if you will appreciate that as much as I do. But there's one point here that I want to use a grease. So if this was a Glock, I like grease on my Glocks because one of the things about the grease is I know this will work in any temperature. But for this gun, I'm recommending oil, except for I'm going to put a dot of grease, just the smallest dot, right here on the safety selector. Alright, now our receiver is cleaned. Let's add a couple drops of lubrication to the rails and begin reinstallation. Barely squeezing anything out here, basically just what's dripping out of the straw. It's very easy to overdo the lube. Alright, now we're ready to begin reinstallation. If it's not already down, start by lowering the hammer like so. I take my thumb and push the extractor all the way down. Grab our assembled slide. Making sure that extractor is captured. We now want to go back with that slide, with that hand position, so that that half moon is up where our slide stop will catch it. So the half moon is here, and here on the slide stop. Going to insert that in the hole like so. Make sure it's flush, and we can release. Now we're ready to do a safety check. Making sure that the pistol is clear. Taking an empty magazine. Insert the magazine. Drop the slide. Engage the safety. The safety works with the hammer up. Disengage the safety, pull the trigger. While squeezing the trigger, move the slide to the rear. Feel the trigger reset. Pull the trigger again. On this gun, we engage the safety. Make sure the slide does not operate. Also, with that magazine in, we want to make sure that we get full lock back for last round lockout. One final step is I'm going to wipe this down with a rag one last time. Clean up any oil spots. Like so. And there we go. That is the field strip and clean of the Sig P238. I'm Nick from HNH Armory. Thank you for watching.